Let me ask you this. Are you insecure about doing an episode on Insecurities?
100%.
There you go, folks. Short and simple. Roll the credits. From Sydney, Australia, all the way to Portland, USA, two misfits hang out after class to riff on the B-sides of professional life. These are your professional misfits. All the way from Sydney, Australia, I am your host, Christopher Sellers.
And from Portland, Oregon, I'm Broedy Ipox.
And we are your professional misfits, where we riff on the B-sides of professional life. And now that we're into season 4 and we're over the interval into episode 6 misfits, we're talking about insecurities because everybody has them. And so we're going to discuss maybe, what are some of ours, how you manage them, what do you do about them, because I'm sure we all feel like we're the only one who's insecure about this thing. And so we're not going to talk about it because it's just sort of silly and takes up too much space. But we're here to talk about the B-sides of professional life. So B, I don't know where to start, my man. It's sort of big. You've got personal, you've got professional, you've got relationships, you've got like how deep and how fast do you want to go? What's insecurities? What's your first impression? How does it land with you?
I mean, that first punchline's really good. Everybody has them. You know what I mean? Like insecurities. Tag, everybody has them. And that's it. And you can just leave it there. And it's funny too, because I know we're about to have an hour-long conversation about it.
Right.
But you really could. And the rest could be filled in by the person reading or, like whatever. And I think it would. The thing that I'm most excited to talk about is like I've got like my own set and like own weird personal way of dealing with them. And I'm also kind of the guy that really, because of where I've been with my insecurities, I can see others. I can see others, and I really I hate that I like it so much, but I like calling that shit out. And I like asking why, because that's one of my biggest things. I always ask myself, why? Like, why am I feeling insecure about this? Why is this making me feel some sort of shame or whatever the hell it might be? And I can generally get to the bottom of it. And you and I have had this conversation. It's like when you reference like some of the more emotional situations you've been through in your journaling, and you look back at it and you're like, okay, buddy, like Jesus Christ,
Calm down.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that's generally how it feels about 90% of the shit that I am to this day still, struggling with being insecure about. So yeah, I'm a little weird about it. So I'm really honestly excited to see where it goes, having an open conversation about it, because I'll be genuine with you. I don't think, not in this context where it's like, what are yours? Or, we ask each other those questions, and it's hard for me to visualize a conversation I've had in my past that's even close to similar. And I'm curious to see what my brain does or doesn't do. Is it going to cringe? Is it going to hide? Is it going to, what's going to happen? So I'm excited.
Well, I took a note just then, actually, because I think it's like, well, it is one of those things, like if we all like hashtag we all have them, but also, hashtag no one talks about them, unless you're in a real private space with someone you trust deeply. Like you're not coming out and saying, baby, like I'm getting older and I don't know if I'm still attractive. Along those lines, right? So
real shit, the shit,
yeah,
the real thoughts that swirl around up there,
yeah. And I guess I think that's a decent place to start to ground everyone in this conversation. Like, well, then why don't we talk about that? Like, why don't we talk about the things that we're unsure or uncomfortable about, or talk about our potential failings? Because often the things that we're insecure about is not how other people see us, and so that's
a very surface level insecurity. and not in a mean.
Again, I know it's early, but someone's driving the wrong way up the one-way street. So
every season we've got somebody.
It's happened. Been caught at least twice this season already. Please, I'm sorry, I interrupted. Please continue. Yeah.
No, I think I think when we talk about those, because those are real too, and again, hashtag everybody has them, but they're just so, it's like a benign kind of insecurity for me. You know what I mean? Like if you've
what
got
is specifically,
I think referencing like physical or you know, something like that that's represented in that way. But then again, I think if we get into that deeper in the episode, I think there's a lot of things that, yeah, like I said, talking out loud, I will come to a little bit, you know, of light on that I probably shoved in a corner somewhere.
Well, yeah. I mean, I get. I don't think we. I'm worried about getting way too deep too quick, because I don't think we can dismiss. Let's start with. Let's go back to the original question. Why don't we talk about them? Why don't we share or air our insecurities more often?
I don't particularly have an answer, because like I said, I'm the guy that, like, if I notice at the gym in particular, got a buddy, I've worked out with him a bunch of times. If I notice you're not pushing a certain amount of weight that I know for a damn fact that you can do it, and your excuse to me is I'm scared of getting hurt, that to me more is an insecurity than it is a fear of being hurt. And you're insecure of the fact that you might not be able to handle the weight. But I'm right there with you. We're on a pulley levered machine. You're not, nothing's going to happen. You know what I mean? So the fear that you're trying to rationalize this with is coming from an insecurity, you know? And I think a lot of people don't realize that they're insecurities. It's like you and I had a conversation before this episode. I think for me, this last week, everything I've been through, I've kind of realized the same thing. It's like for a long time, there's a plethora of things that might have been affecting me in that way that I kind of just shoved to the corner. Yeah. And it wasn't that I wasn't insecure about them or feeling a certain way about them. It's that I was refusing to look at them or acknowledge them. And that's rough. I think that really is the root of it, is like, if I feel this way about myself, I don't necessarily want to contextualize it in a conversation and have to face it. I don't, I don't want to. So I think that is, if I'm being honest, it for most people, you know, whether it's weight, whether it's where your mental health is at, or your finances, or just all that cascading set of things. I just feel a lot of people, and it's funny because our conversation this week too, a lot of it I think is shame. I think a lot of what insecurity actually represents itself as is shame, and that's a hard thing to bring to the table. That's a hard thing to bring to the table.
That's why I wanted to start there first. It's funny that you briefly sort of touched on like coping mechanisms, because one of the notes I've got here to talk about is like, how do we mask our insecurities? Because as we sort of move through adolescence into adulthood, we get quite intelligent and savvy around masking what our insecurities are. But of course, I want to go one step back from that to say, well, where do these insecurities come from? And I think the very simple, psychology 101 answer is, you've obviously had something that's upset you or been insecure about something, and then brought it to someone whom you trust, and it wasn't heard in the way that you intended. And so because you were rebuffed early, you learned then, don't share this sensitive thing like with this person, these people. I'll give you
9 times out of 10 is genuinely the people that are closest to you.
Yeah, and that's and really unfortunately that's growing up. Not every parent can be the saint all day every day under all circumstances. It's just the way that it is. It's and that's to your point. That's where the shame starts, because it internalizes a sensation of, this strongly affects me, whatever it is. Like, this profoundly affects me and emotionally, upsets me or triggers me or affects me, and I'm not allowed to, or I'm not supposed to share this thing. And so then, if we all extrapolate that out, we can definitely understand how all sorts of other dysfunctions and compulsions and different sorts of behavior can manifest from that. But specifically, if we're talking about insecurities, we're talking about insecurities. I think what you mentioned right at the beginning about surface level, if it's to do with body parts, for instance, like someone's got a big nose or a big head, or, in my case, I had more of a tan than any of the other kids in the school, which, yeah. But and of course, being our higher selves, we can all dismiss it as like, oh yeah, like whatever. But there's a line from an episode of Scrubs, believe it or not, that smacks me in the face. It's like, look, are you really happy with yourself? And everyone's like, yeah, like, of course. And she's like, you're lying. You can't tell me you would look in the mirror and not wish to change one thing. Now that's something for y'all misfits to chew on and to decide what that one thing may or may not be, but to ignore it and to mask it, to mask an insecurity of saying, well, I'm, you can be confident in something, sure, but there might be still little things that you're insecure about. Now, it is possible to recognize something and still put it back up on the shelf. It is still, to recognize, like, I'm not quite happy with how my body is right now, but I'm going to work on it. Or, okay, like, that's just where it is right now. It's not going to take over my entire life. The reason I sort of put a pin in this for the moment is, my friend Gabriel, who used to be my neighbor downstairs, did video and media production and a lot of social media production for certain small businesses. And one of them at a period of time was a plastic surgery clinic that also specialized in injectables, right?
Marketing for that would just be a fucking soul crusher.
It was, and really the only reason he took the gig was like, A, he needed the money, B, it was pseudo documentary for him, like to get a peek behind the curtain. And he's quite literally recording them, like doing ops on people and sculpting and this and that, and also getting like a whole bunch of behind the scenes footage. So to draw the parallel, I was like, we can sit here on a podcast and go, oh, it's like, to be insecure about your body is, like it's so surface level. But at the same time, you can't deny it is a multi-billion-dollar global industry.
Yeah, that felt really insensitive. Now that, like, but I don't recant it. I still feel that way, and I guess. Yeah, let's go there, because I'll double down and say that the reason that I feel at surface level is you kind of nailed it on the head. It's not that, oh, I think you're being a child or this or that. It's that if you don't have the capacity to look past that, there's a myriad of things that are a bigger issue to me than fucking insecurities at this point. You know what I mean? With you, and that sounds judgmental as fuck, but like, that's where I'm at. I would hold that space away from someone like that, because at that point, when would having a conversation with you about the insecurities that you're trying to point out about me ever be a productive one? So it's just useless not to feel them. Like, again, like, Misfits on YouTube, you can see these front two teeth right here are pointed inwards a little bit. And that shit for the longest time fucked with me heavily. Deeply as a child, and teenager, even as a young man, like, I still to this day sometimes have that fleeting thought that's like, well, you could do trays or get braces, or it's an option. It's an option, and it just doesn't go any further than that. It doesn't go any further than it's an option, because, again, it's so irrelevant to me. If you can't take me for who I am because of my fucking teeth, I mean, you're not in my you're not on my radar at all anyways. And I guess that doesn't really like necessarily bring clarity to the fact that I think that having those insecurities is a little bit surface level as well, but it does say to me that there's a solution to it, right? Like you can have that insecurity, you can feel that way, and as long as I know on the other side, I do have an option. I'm not. This isn't. If it fucking destroyed me again, I have a fix. It's like the same thing if I gained weight again. Like after my my youngest son, I gained a lot of fucking weight, and it fucked with me. It fucked with
Really?
me. Oh, it was brutal. That was
You
probably one
weren't
of the.
pregnant?
No, it was so funny too because
Or
I
is
just
it empathy weight gain?
everyone says that. I made jokes and jokes and jokes. I was like, that's just bullshit. That's not gonna happen.
Right.
I get to a year after he's born, and I'm fucking 55 pounds heavier than I've ever been in my whole life.
Wow. Right.
I'm like, oh, you know what the hell? What the hell? And that messed with me. But there was a solution. You know,
Mhm.
I knew I could do something about it. And that to me is kind of like where I'm like, that's surface level. It's like the insecurities that are a lot deeper, that are a little more attached to trauma, that are kind of ingrained in multi-layered behaviors. That's some shit that's a little harder to dismiss as surface level. You know what I mean? And
Like
yeah,
what?
I don't know, but
We're here now.
I know, but it's interesting too because you did make the reference to plastic surgery, and I have to be honest with you. Anybody that goes to that level, obviously the insecurity is to a much deeper level, in my opinion, than just being able to say, okay, there is a solution like plastic surgery,
Right.
but then going and doing it. Like that's the
Yeah. So here's sort of the caveat. There is, I think, a portion of the population when it comes to plastic surgery or even LASIK, for instance, or having certain moles removed or whatever. There are some people who can go, this procedure done. You know, I just want this fixed, or for health reasons, or X, Y, and Z, or it's easier. It's funny. My mum wore glasses her entire life for us as children. And then sometime in my sort of late 20s, she went and had, or even like maybe early 30s, she went ahead and got LASIK. And like even as kids, you know, you used to giggle like mum's four eyes. She's like, no, I wear glasses and I don't care. I'm like, okay. But then she goes and gets LASIK. So then it sort of suggests, right. Now the point is, but like mum had LASIK and stopped, you know, and I think she's had like one or two sort of like moles removed, you know, but that's it. And I'll reference Gabe again because there's what terrified him and the stories that he told was it's not the one person who sort of comes in with I'm just going to get this done. It's the snowball patient. Because once you've had this done, it's like, oh, I could just get this. Oh, and I can just get that. And then
I didn't even think about that.
And then
that's such a shitty game to play.
Right, but this more ties into what you're talking about, like this deeper insecurity, because it wasn't really about just a little bit of Botox, just a little bit of lip filler, then it's cheek filler, then it's jaw shave, then it's this, and then it's that, and then it's been maintained, and then it sort of rolls on, you know, and that was terrifying. Now I'll tell you. And that was terrifying. That was like clown show fucking terrifying. But the really, really scary thing, and this is how insidious it was, I might be sidetracking a little bit, but Gabe's a clever kid. Most of the staff that worked there were female. And so you've got a lot of young girls in their 20s like doing all the
would not have seen that.
You know, a lot of the young girls doing like all the injectables for all the patients and that sort of stuff. So you've got rather pretty, you know, but youngish 20-year-old girls like Botox, lip filler, like just injecting themselves because the product's on hand, right? That's one thing. But then they say to Gabe, who's a good looking kid, and he's probably early 30s, and they're like, oh, like you should get a little something done. Gabe, being sort of a savvy documentary sort of filmmaker, and he's like, oh really? What do you think I should have done? And so then they start suggesting to him all the little nips and tucks and injectables he could get if he just wanted to sort of spruce himself up a bit. So, for instance, right? But yeah, but he look, that's a whole. We shouldn't dwell here too long, but I think it's a interesting and extreme example, and getting a little behind the scenes of how these sort of places, operate. And of course, there's a market for it, and there's a growing market for men as much as there is for women. You can argue.
I saw one the other day. It blew my fucking mind. Dudes are, and I don't know exactly how the procedure works, Misfits, so don't quote me. But I was watching this video. Dude cut into the fucking long portion of his leg. Not himself, like it is a medical procedure. And they use two brackets to hold the bone in alignment with a piece that was supposed to make a filler. So objective of the surgery is that you gain height, right?
I was gonna say, this is not the guys that had their legs broken to be taller. Jesus fuck.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's a new form of it, like it's a new procedure of it. The thing that really struck me, right? Because I can get behind that. I'm a tall guy and I've been around a ton of shorter guys that I can tell that's a big fucking thing. Like, and again, it's weird because we talk about that being surface level. That's one of those physical things. But again, I think it does present a ton more issues underneath that.
Yeah. Well, there's okay. Well, there seems to be three.
You have to be some sort of fucking nutty to cut your fucking leg. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I sound like such a douche in this episode.
It's intense. I get really queasy around that sort of stuff. But there's a big three that are sort of marketed for men, like in terms of, I guess, profiting off insecurities, and that's height. Well, that's recent, because before that you couldn't do anything, and now it's pretty fucking extreme. Anyway, so height, it's male pattern baldness, which I'm arguably a victim of. Might talk about that later. I don't know. And penis size.
Yep.
Those are the three.
Those were the three in my head when you said that. So that's awesome to not even have correlated on that, and it's fucking perfect.
Some girls might not know because it's not their world, but any sort of a lot of medical sites, and of course every second porn ad to do with anything is like, want to increase your penis size, here's like 50 different methods and pills and hacks and tips and tricks, and I'm like, wow. And I'm super thankful I didn't fall victim to two of those three. I did, look, I'll be honest, when I sort of going into my 30s and my hair did start thinning and stuff like that, I absolutely freaked the fuck out. Like, I'm aging, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna be ugly, no one's ever gonna want me. Okay, now you're laughing.
I'm laughing because I feel like I've had the same fucking thought.
You can see the journals in the background, Misfits. I could probably pull out any one of those journals and I will have written verbatim, like, I'm ugly, no one's ever gonna want me, what the fuck, like, rah 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 rah. And then when I finally bit the bullet and said, I'm never gonna comb over, I'm not gonna be that guy, and I'm never gonna get a rug, I'm never gonna be that guy, so I'm just gonna have to bite the bullet and shave. And I did.
Okay, hold on, just for visual, what was the hairstyle before the thinning kind of like really fucking hit you in the face?
Like, I've got a huge forehead.
Did you have length?
It was like short, sort of messy, like, like short back and sides and like a little bit on top. And I've always had a huge forehead, so that didn't really do me any favors. But now I remember.
That's why I wear a hat.
Yeah, right. I remember. So I remember. I'm going to shave my head. I bit the bullet. I'm like, fine. And I rather than go to a barber, I went to like the local, like, cheap dollar shop, like whatever, and I bought a pair of electric clippers, and I brought them home because I was so embarrassed and so ashamed that I didn't want anyone to like know or see me, so I'm going to do this myself. And so I, it's a great story. I started to shave my head. Now, because the clippers were cheap, they basically died halfway through. Bro. So I've got like patches of a shaved head, patches of still full grain hair, and this thing is seized up and died. But I kept the receipt and I sucked it up and I went back to the store and I went, hey, I think there's a little bit of an issue. And she's like, oh, I'm really sorry. And I think I even literally took my hat off and showed her. And she's like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, it's not working. She's like, well, here, take another one. Like, just replace it. So I replaced it, walked back home, continued to try and do whatever, and it died. The second razor, electric razor died. And so there's little patches and like whatever. I'm like, fucking Jesus. So again, take it back to the chick, basically get a refund and everything else like that. So I've done 3/4 of the job with like little patches like all over my head. And then I just gave up and went to a barber. I'm like, hey man, my razor died. Can you just clean this up? And he's like, yeah, sure. And so like number one, sort of all over. So now I've got a very pale, brand spanking new, like sort of shaved head, and I'm like, oh fuck, like I don't know how I feel about it. I look like a cancer patient. Like rah, this is gross. Again, like I'm never going to be attractive. No one ever's going to want me. Now, special shout out to my friend Marie, who you've all met, I think season 2, my French friend Marie, because she was the first woman who saw me with a shaved head, and there was, I think, psychologically and emotionally, like a little make or break moment. Like either she's gonna look at me and give me like the pity look, like no, it's fine, you know, or hopefully not. Right. And she didn't. She's like, that really suits you, really strong. You've got a good head, very masculine, rah. And it, again, I guess this is sort of part of our insecurities, is that because I was approved and accepted by someone else, it was then no longer an issue, you know, and because of my skin tone, I could get a bit of a tan, and then that all kind of worked out. And so, you know, c'est la vie. When I'm not rocking this, I'm just rocking like shaved head.
Yeah.
You know?
It does look good, by the way.
Thanks, man. Thanks. But look, still got roasted by my brother. Still got.
That's the brother. That's you cannot expect anything less.
Yeah. But I will absolutely testify that it took a very, very long time to get to that point, because you're sort of hoping, like, it's, I don't know if it's youth or whatever, or just vanity, but it's like, fuck, I don't know. But I think, look, yeah. So and again, this isn't talked about. Really, there would be silent anonymous forums all over the internet of like silent anonymous men confessing, like, holy shit, I don't know if I should. Does this work? Does this medication work? Does this, all this sort of stuff? And it's not openly talked about. So for the ladies out there, yeah, it can be a concern for like a lot of men. And, you know, some of us make a bigger deal of it than it is.
It was in both of our top 3. I mean, that says something, you know, and it's funny too, because there's a really relevant example right now. So Mr. Olympia, Chris Bumstead, he, same thing, receding hairline, going through it. He did Mr. Olympia and got done with it, and now he's taken a year to get things right with himself, and part of that was having plugs. He did the whole surgery side of it.
He did the Elon Musk job.
Oh my god, it scares the shit out of me even thinking about it. Ripping hair from the back of your fucking head to just have it shoved,
stapled into your. Yep.
Anyways, and he talked about a lot. He's Mr. Olympia. Okay, so for anybody that doesn't know what that is the epitome of bodybuilding. That is the highest accolade that you can get in that sport, and that was him 5 times, by the way. 5 fucking times. Like, he's really on every other piece of himself got it dialed in and feels good about it and knows he's accomplishing things and even talks about that the confidence from one area did not transfer to another. And it's
Mm.
and it's funny too, because not until that interview did I realize that, again, that's where the masking or hiding or pushing in the corner like kind of came from for me, is that I knew that the confidence I have in other areas that I can kind of float by with those things,
Yeah.
it didn't affect those things. So they
Yeah.
had to be compartmentalized and put somewhere else, because
Mm.
they would just stay too relevant, and they
Mm.
would, it would affect me, you know, and that doesn't mean that they don't. It just means that I work actively to try to separate myself from that. And I don't know if that's healthy. I'm not sure that
No,
it
well,
is.
I think it's a really, really interesting behavior that you highlight, both in Mr. Olympia and in yourself, that yeah, like success or aptitude in this thing over here doesn't translate over here. Like and I'm sure we all know people are hugely successful, have great relationships, but are insecure about X body part or being seen in a certain way, and we would look at them and go, why, how, you know, but because for them it's purely one of those instances of one's internal world and internal narrative has pricked at certain things, and yeah, and a cough medicine doesn't soothe an earache, for instance. Um,
Do you have
yeah,
an example of that for yourself, or is that kind of
I'm
like,
I'm trying to, yeah.
I'm just wondering, you know, like for me, in bringing it up and talking about it and airing it out and then making the example with Mr. Olympia, it's like, is that more common, I guess, than I in my own head make it too? Because that feels like like I said at the beginning of the episode, I feel like a unique, maybe it's not at all, you know, maybe that's like kind of a normal thing. And the way that you just framed it made me feel that way, because it's like the internal narrative part, right? We all have those things in that dialogue that might say things that aren't the kindest, but you know, I label it as compartmentalizing. It might be kind of the same experience, but just different kind of framework for somebody else. And I'm
Mm.
just curious if that is the same, you know, does the, because you've got a ton of shit, you know, like I look at you and we're talking about this and having this conversation. You've got a ton of shit that in my mind you should have fucking through the roof fucking confidence, and there should not be an insecurity that you can line out in a book, you know, and that's
Okay, let's play a game then, because when you asked me that question, my impulse was to say I'm unsure because I have a certain view of how people see me, which isn't sort of true to whatever my insecurities are. And so now you say that, which sort of leads into this game. Then it's like, then objectively, for the sake of the podcast, you tell me how you see me, and I'll tell you the actual insecurities that I have and deal with while like this impression of me exists. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'd say you're stylish, well versed, educated person. That's the top layer. You know, if I just had to pin you right there, take it a little bit deeper. I think you're extremely cultured. I think you have a wild aptitude for creativity. You do know that one though.
I do, yeah.
Um, but I think also that kind of breeds this philosopher, poet kind of image that I get of you when I look from outside in, that
Mhm.
I don't know if you carry or if you feel that way. And again, I kind of get the warrior poet vibe from the outside in that. And that is, again, when you say that, and for someone like you and I that has spent a lot of time in the creative industry or the
Mhm.
arts or something, that's a fucking high compliment, so like that's what I see
Okay.
of you.
That's
So
that's that's it. That's interesting. And like, thank you. So here's my lived experience.
okay.
Um, I'm a single guy living alone in a bachelor pad in the middle of Sydney. I haven't had a serious relationship in a number of years. Casual sex really isn't my jam, but then like being at it's my birthday in a few days, so sort of reflective of my life and being alone for such a long time, I sort of wonder like, am I always going to be alone? And am I grossly unattractive that no one wants me, or grossly uninteresting, or too weird, too bizarre? What you describe sounds rich and interesting, I'm sure, to a lot of people. But and then for me, if I'm positive, go, yeah, like it's a rich and interesting description. At the same time, I'm aware of it doesn't neatly fit in a box, and because I don't neatly fit in a box, I'm not easily recognized. I probably never will be. So it's going to need someone of a certain understanding and interest to unpack all of that. Now, will I ever meet them? I don't know. But in the meantime, I'm fucking alone. You
Hmm.
know. So
Hmm.
it's a really, so for me, and I can trace this all the way back to 6-year-old Chris. It's like I didn't fit in this social club, this school, this whatever, and I was made to feel like an outsider. And I sort of, you just adjust and adapt to that, and live that as best you can. And then and various versions of that through adolescence and life to now, like where you can still be a cultured, successful, educated, driven outsider, but you're still an outsider, and that comes with a cost.
Yeah.
So my deepest insecurity before was that I'll die and no one will know me, and I think I've solved that one. I've got. I think. I've got a few things that
You
should
got
play out.
you've got it solved. Let's
Right.
just
So there's that. But in terms of a committed, loving, trusting relationship, and me, that's still like, will I ever find it? And so that's an objective question. But then if we're talking about personal insecurities, it's like, if I haven't got it, and the only one thing in common with all of this is me, like, is it my fault? Like, am I unlovable? Am I just not attractive? Am I and so you, it's a balancing act of sort of acknowledging what are arguably negative thoughts and kind of going, no, and trying to balance and stay healthy and sane sort of over here. It doesn't help when friends like Marie kind of go, I I don't get matched on anything on any of the fucking apps, and she's like, I don't understand it. She's like, because I have guy friends who are less attractive and less interesting than you, and they get all these matches. I'm like, thanks, Marie, thank
well,
you.
you and I have talked about that, and I don't want to stay here too long because I
Yeah, yeah,
don't.
yeah.
The thing is, I mean, and we can for a minute because look, those guys present safety because of their insecurities. And look, that is something that I know women acknowledge, right? If you approach a man and he might not physically be the most attractive, to some degree he's going to compensate in a different area, whether that be financially, whether that be in his
Mm-hmm.
behavior towards you. That. I think that's an easier grab for most women. I'm not. I'm not a woman. So, Misfits, if you want to fucking skewer me alive, because our YouTube viewership is now 30% women, which is kind of cool. Fucking
Hey,
cool. Yeah. Um, I,
hey, girls.
right. The thing is, like, I know that also comes from a place of insecurity. You feel that if there was a man that was attractive or presented himself confidently, that a large number of the women that are using apps like that are insecure enough about themselves to say, he wouldn't match me.
Yeah, look, and again, like, yes, like I go through that, I game that out mentally as well, but then immediately go, you're an arrogant cunt if you think that that's how, like, women on
Oh,
apps. No,
fucking
but
please.
sure, but that's all right. But that's insecurity,
And
then
it's fair. It's fair. It's just,
right.
to me, I heard a quote the other day that was like, it really struck me. It was like, if you have a voice that sounds arrogant and borderline narcissistic, it's probably the benevolent higher self. If you hear something that's demeaning and demonstrative, it's probably the lower self. And I looked at that, and it came from one of my psychology groups. I'm not sure which professor or whoever wrote it, but it, to me, says a lot. And it's funny too, because we've trained ourselves to look at the voice of confidence, the voice of secure belief, as narcissistic, as something negative
Yeah.
or arrogant, or however the fuck you want to frame it. And to me, I've worked really extremely hard, I think, over the last like 5 years, because the internal dialogue for me was a fucking nightmare. I'd go to bed exhausted. And really truly, it came from the conversations I was having with myself. They were terrible and they sucked, and it wasn't somebody that was my friend inside my head. And
Well
really
said.
truly,
Well said.
and,
Yeah.
and I've worked really really hard to get out of that. So I do this kind of bullshit silver lining thing that even the internal part of me knows, like, half of it's fluff, half of it's fluff. But the more I do it in repetition, the more that I find that I'm not bullshitting the silver lining that I come up with. I'm
Yep.
genuinely finding it now,
Yep.
because I'm kind of training that muscle. It's the same thing for that internal dialogue. When I have those moments of, oh, my teeth are crooked or this or that, I, again, whether it's arrogant, whether it's narcissistic, whatever it is, I start to lay out a list of things that I have fucking wild strength in, or that I'm abundantly confident in myself in. And those little pieces that are the things that were nagging me start to become even smaller. They just and almost reframed sometimes, where I'm like, shit, that's actually not as bad as I fucking thought it was. Like, that might be what makes me me.
Right. So here's a great exercise for all the misfits at home who want something practical and concrete to do. Next time you're feeling shitty or insecure about whatever, cool. Go and sit down. Go and sit down with a pen and a piece of paper, or even go for a walk and take a voice note, right? And start to recite all the things that you like about yourself, you feel that you're good at, that people compliment you on, that you find attractive and that you like about you. And it's going to feel stupid for the first half a dozen times that you do it. And it's going to have that sort of hot flush of shame about it, and that you're doing something wrong. And I want you to sit in that, because here's the real moral lesson. Like, if you're feeling that hot sense of shame about writing things down that you take pride in, or that you're good at, or that you are attractive for, ask yourself then why you feel that way about these positive things of yourself. And you might start to get a bit of a deeper answer from, like, where these insecurities come from, how they've manifested, and how you've developed strategies, mechanisms to cope and to sort of move around this sort of sense. As an exercise, do it for me.
Yeah.
Now, to ground this in something that's a bit more, I don't know, practical. Money, Brody, money and career. Insecure, confident, happy. Big thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm a weird bird there. I'm a weird bird because I have an abundance of insecurities, but I've had enough conversations in my life and in my professional landscape that what I've been able to accomplish for myself, what I do on the regular, there's a ton of admiration outside in for that, and I'm extremely and wildly lucky for that. I am. So Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm always in the back of my mind. Am I perceived as successful as the achievements that I know I've made? Because a lot of people don't know a ton of the achievements I made. They don't know I worked for the biggest marketing firm in the world. They don't know that I've had budgets of millions of dollars. They don't know that I've worked on creative projects like Disney and Nike. They don't know these kind of things. And you start to kind of like pin it, like you said earlier, like, are people going to know me? Are they going to know that? So
Mm.
I always kind of have that thought in the back of my head, should I talk about it more? Should I share it? Am I
Yeah.
doing myself a disservice because people don't know of what I've done? That kind of thing. It really quickly vanishes because I've found, at least in my own personal space, that the sense of accomplishment I get actually isn't through the end of achievement. It's genuinely through the experience. And we've talked about this quite a bit. I'm obsessed with learning. I'm obsessed with self-growth and that whole dynamic of the mind and philosophy and just all that stuff. So the process is where I thrive. And I think, if I'm being real, I get most insecure about the end because I then don't know where I'm going to center my worth. And it doesn't matter if I achieve something within that, if I'm not actively working in something that I feel good about, that's when I start to become my insecure version. And it is heavily related to the profession. It is heavily related to the career. It is, again, in almost the the side of it that I think a lot of us don't want to talk about is how I'm perceived by others. Am I that failing social media content creator? Nobody has any clue has done the things he's done, or am I that guy that people are like, wow, I really wish I could make videos like that, or I wish
Mm.
I could do this, and that, or I wish I had worked at this place. I don't know. I don't know. And I think for me to end this in a kind of roundabout way with the career thing is like, that's where I find the most confidence, is that I don't know. I don't know what you think of me. I don't know what she thinks of me. I don't know what he thinks of me. I don't know what they think of me. There's kind of a superpower in that, in the sense that I get to decide then how I'm trying to be perceived, because I can do all those things without intention and then just hope that somebody fucking gives me a positive perception of myself, or I can take that and understand those pieces and what makes me land at the place that I feel I'm being perceived that way, and hope that, again, just hope that it's reciprocated. I don't know. I don't
Mm.
know. I don't know. But that's not also a bad thing. I'm, again, kind of addicted to the unknown.
I- You sort of highlighted an interesting dynamic around where one places or defines their worth. Whether it's career, title, relationships,
Yeah.
money, whatever it happens to be. I guess this is kind of relevant for the week Brody and I are both having Misfits, FYI. So but it makes sense that if you're let's take it back to school, right? If you're good at math, eh, if you're good at math and you do well in the test and you get praised for it, and then you start to like, well, he's the math kid, she's the math girl, right? And if you start to define yourself in that way a little bit, and you can't help but not to, it's a positive thing, right? You're good at math, so you sort of wear that little badge and like, well, I'm good at math, I'm the math kid. The shadow side of that, of course, is you now got to stay good at math. Like, are you going to be good enough? That's sort of where these little things come from. I guess it's that sort of, yeah, sun and shadow side of things. Like if you're the pretty girl, if you're the jock bro, and that becomes your sort of identity. And if you, there's a slight separation. There's the identity that people want to put on you, sort of like, or how people see you, literally how Brody described me 20 minutes ago, versus like what you invest in yourself as like, I represent this. So, so if people see you as the pretty girl and you believe and want to be the pretty girl, great. But the shadow side to that is like, are you always going to be pretty? Are you always going to be attractive to everyone? Right?
Yep.
Look at any influencer, and you can start to see this sort of trap that you fall into is if I get attention by doing X, I have to keep doing attention, or keep doing X, or raising the stakes of X to keep your attention, right? And I guess the same thing goes with career. Like if I'm the finance bro, and I work really hard to become the finance bro and sort of work my way up, you then got to keep that thing, so if you define yourself as that and only that, you're going to have to deal with the shadow sides of things. So I guess what we're trying to unstitch here is, and it's funny that Broedy mentioned it because it's literally been my week this week, and it's been a really rough, gross, deep, dark week of trying to define self-worth. If I'm honest with you, Misfits, it was one of those realizations that I define, despite what Broedy said about me, which was lovely, I define my worth by achievement. So written the book, done these things, worked for Netflix, blah, blah, all this indie shit that I've done, major fintech project sitting fucking somewhere waiting for funding to be delivered. Specifically that. So my little narrative in my head is like, I'm the creative kid who beat all the corporates and did it better than them because they couldn't. And here's the proof. But because that funding hasn't been signed yet, and because I haven't achieved the project and the title and the money, I'm no one. I'm just another unknown creative whatever doing a podcast somewhere, right? Now, obviously, this is a really depressing, harsh environment to live in. But at least I had the objectivity to go, yeah, that's kind of a bit cold, Chris. Like, you've done more, and maybe we don't define ourselves by just one project. So I go, great. If I'm not, the rational and sane thing to do, the healthy thing to do is, if I'm not going to judge my self-worth, my entire self-worth and value as a man, as a partner, as all these things, by achievement, and specifically financial achievement, then what shall I define it by? And if I'm honest with you, Misfits, I did the little exercise I mentioned earlier, and I didn't really come up with much. Like, I don't know. And I'm kind of guessing. Like, I think I'm a good friend. I think I'm a kind person. It's funny because all the things that Broedy mentioned 20 minutes ago, I'm fairly sure I didn't write.
Yeah.
So it would have been a whole other thing. So and this is my homework on insecurities, on self-worth, on wanting to move ahead and grow as a healthy sort of human, because arguably when the project does come through and we get the funding and I'm on the front cover of Forbes, if I still maintain this mentality of I'm defined by achievement, I'm either going to burn myself out or suicide or some shit. It's not going to last long.
Yeah, I don't mean to be dark, but I mean, that's because again, it's the same thing for myself. I've said that, I don't have kind of the public accolades of it, but I've achieved a fuck ton of really incredible shit, especially in terms of a marketer. If you look at the general marketer today, like they're not working for a Fortune 500 company. They're working for a small company. They are taking on every hat and facet of that fucking game and field, and they're likely fucking burned out by 35 and it's done. They find something else to do, whether that's fucking management or blah, blah, blah. I've seen it time and time again. I'm in my 30s and I've done this shit. I've done this shit to the point that I have delusional confidence that I can do it for myself. That's fucking cool. And I wonder if for you, because you had mentioned earlier, right, the exercise kind of sometimes feeling gross. Like it feels gross to say nice things about yourself, which is weird, which is just
it is.
weird.
Yeah.
It's weird. But I wonder if, like, for you too, with that, the kind of achievement thing, if that's what it is, like, where you haven't exercised that muscle of looking at things other than achievement for self-worth. And the more that you do it, the more that you'll be able to find a grounding in something, you know what I mean? Because you are a great friend and you do have a fucking fuck ton of strengths that are just, I think people would beg for, you know what I mean? And that's, we just don't give ourselves that credit, you know, and that's,
No. And that's no, yeah, we don't, and that's collectively, like, all of us. I'm sure everyone who's listening at home, and if you've got a partner, you could turn to them and say, I'm insecure about these things, and they'll look at you like you're crazy and go, that's what I love about you. You know what I mean? It's
right.
It's a really funny thing, and we're social animals. We need that. We need people who can reflect to us our best qualities despite our insecurities, but also sort of hold us accountable for our failings and shortcomings. Broedy, it's been that week for Broedy, folks, and I think I said to him, "It's like, if me being a friend is tolerating, like, your worst behavior, then I'm not a good friend." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fun fact, but right, and I, again, something I noticed as well, because, like, my birthday's coming up, and again, because I haven't achieved all the things that I thought I could achieve by my birthday, I feel like a failure, and I feel small, and I don't have news to share. And because of all those reasons, I've actually retreated from a whole bunch of social groups. Like, anyone that knows me knows that my birthday lasts a week. And this year I haven't really mentioned it to anyone, because low key I don't really want to do anything, because low key I don't feel like much. And so this is a really unfair emotional and psychological framework by which I reflect, like, really unfair emotional and psychological mirror that I look into that is distorted, which is a really apt analogy, because anyone who's really insecure about their body sees the same thing. They look into a mirror and they're disgusted or distorted by what they see, even though it's not what anyone else sees. So what I'm trying to do this week, and probably for the next month, is trying to recalibrate that in a way that's more fair and kind and grounded into who I am and what I want to be, and sort of step back from the need and want for attachment, the need and want for achievement. That'll be nice. It'll come.
Yeah,
But
it'll take some practice.
Yeah, let me tell you. And it's once I move past the resentment, it's humbling to be at this age and sort of have to kind of do this emotional homework, because you feel like you're 20 all over again. You know?
Yes, I do. It's kind of like I was saying to you in our personal conversation, and to reference that psychological mirror, I read another thing that fucking smacked me right in the face, and it was, you can look in the mirror, but are you really looking into your own eyes? And that right there is it, right? You can look at the mirror and you can see all the little things,
the outline.
and you really, it's easy as shit. But can you stare directly into your eyes and feel comfortable enough with the person that's gazing back at you? And that's yeah, I think it's like Carl Jung that talks about, peering into the abyss. It's like,
And
eventually it'll peel back. Yeah, it's like that is the work, Misfits. As much as it fucking sucks, just like Chris said, I think, especially too for myself, not necessarily around self-worth, but just kind of around some of my own behaviors and acknowledging some of the things that I'm going through and the way that I'm handling and or compartmentalizing them. That shit's not fun. I actually don't enjoy looking at the mirror sometimes. It's a tough fucking gig. But
no one likes looking into the mirror and being repulsed by what they see, or being disappointed by what they see. But you then have a choice, Misfits. If you look into the mirror and you're fat, you can kind of go, it's hard, and reason. Or you can say, I should take myself to the gym. And then you get up the next morning and you take yourself to the gym. And then you get up the next morning and you go back to the gym. That's swimming for me 3 times a week at 6 a.m.
Right.
You know? But yeah, mirrors, all that sort of stuff. I lost my train of thought, but that doesn't matter.
We're right at the end.
We're at the end. But that's the thing. And I think the conversation is valuable. I know we probably dipped in and out of personal and sort of around, but I think it's valuable because so much of adult life, specifically professional life, specifically adult professional life on LinkedIn, where these conversations often go, is about presenting oneself as flawless, as authentic and genuine, in inverted commas for those that are listening on Spotify. But at the same time, you know, confident, completely in control, you know, and it's just not fucking true, right? And if we can sort of break open some space to have a conversation about it here and little fireside chat, and y'all listening at home, hopefully it gives you some permission and space to reflect on your own. If you've got a healthy and open, trusting partner or family and friends, sort of bounce this off them, you know, or hopefully gives you some insight in how to talk to them about some insecurities that they may have. Yeah.
No, that's really lovely. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. And it's funny because at the beginning of the conversation, truly, I had my own set of things that I was worried about that may have come up, or, you know, just all these things. It's weird to be at the end of the conversation now. And it's kind of like referencing back to the journaling. It's like, now that I've aired some of this shit out, number one, I want to go share the things I've found with the people closest to me. And then number two, it makes me less scared to explore again. You know, I don't feel so nervous about diving back into what is really fucking making me tick right now. That it just feels healthier now. And yeah, I hope to leave you guys with that. It doesn't have to be clean, doesn't have to be perfect. It just, as long as you can get it out in some way, whether it's a page, whether it's a partner, whether fuck the voice note thing. I loved that shit earlier. That is such a cool practice. And to hear your own, voice. Yeah, fuck. To hear your own voice fucking recite back to you things that are important and should fucking matter. That's pretty impactful in my mind.
On a high note, I'll leave you with a song, Misfits. There's an indie band called Lawrence in the States, and they've got an amazing track called I'm Confident, I'm Insecure. It's hilarious. It's funny. Listen to the semi-acoustic version that they do in a sound booth. It's brilliant. It sums up all of this conversation in such a joyful, lighthearted, human way. It's brilliant. I couldn't not do this conversation and mention that song. So there you go. There's a high note. Go listen to that and then go for a walk and have some voice notes. Right. That wraps up episode 6. No one's insecure anymore. We solved all of it. Episode 7. Do you know what's coming up for episode 7, Brody?
We're having a guest.
Take a drink.
We're having a guest. Hold on. Right. We're having a guest. And
it's a 50-50 shot.
Yeah, hold on. It's got to be mellow, right? It's
How
mellow.
many drinks? It is. So then what's the conversation? He doesn't know. So take that drink, folks. Take that drink, Misfits.
I tried.
Episode 7, we're talking about emotional intelligence, which so it dovetails neatly from talking about insecurities. So let's talk about emotional intelligence. What is it? Why does it matter? Is it more than just empathy? Because empathy is so hot right now in corporate. So let's talk about it. What is it? Is it really such a big deal, or is LinkedIn just jerking off again? Brody, do you... what do you anticipate on in a discussion with Mello, who's a fellow Australian who's also written a book on emotional intelligence? Like, is it important? Is it valuable, or is it just overrated and we're all too woke?
Woke. Oh my God. Fuck that word. Jesus Christ. I'm excited. I talking about insecurities and tie it into the next episode. I'm always worried when it's two Australians, one American, that I'm just gonna sound like a
nice
fucking
guys.
clown. Oh yeah, it has nothing to do with you guys. It just has to do with me sounding like an uncultured shit.
He's an insecure American.
Yes, I am.
I didn't think there was such a thing. And they're like, all Americans wave their flag, USA, number one in the world, freedom. I think it'll be interesting. So Mello works specifically in corporate, doing these sort of workshops he wrote a book on burnout and how to avoid it and emotional intelligence in the workplace. So I'm probably going to grill him a bit because I think that most initiatives for empathy and emotional intelligence in corporate are a bit of a joke. And so, well, not that emotional intelligence isn't important. It's the process and the practice by which they try to achieve it and simulate it in corporate is a bit of a joke. So stick around for that, Misfits. In fact, if you're a member of Camp Misfit on Patreon, you can be listening to it right now. Right now. Because you get all the episodes 2 weeks in advance. You get discounts on merch. You get bonus episodes that nobody else sees. It's delightful. It's delicious. You can listen for free and watch us build on both YouTube and Spotify. Shout out to the 30% female audience that are on YouTube and the 50% female audience that are on Spotify. That wraps it up. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can go to promisfitspodcast.com for all the professional services and to learn everything you need to know about us. Broedy, any final thoughts?
No. I'm insecure.
We all are. On that note, I've been Chris.
I've been Broedy.
We've been insecure and you've been classy, Misfits. We'll see you on the next one.